Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3630. Today's date is October 8th, 2025. It's been almost like a um, morning at 8:36 a.m. All right, let's just jump into the question. Let's go. Okay, question is, what if clean fusion power was available everywhere? Oh, that's a really good question. Clean fusion power. Okay, let me explain as simple as possible as you can. Okay, first of all, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? Okay, this is what if question. Why am I asking this? What if question is always really interested way to kind of like give the answer. It's kind of like a something force you to think to create that reality. And it was like a really feel really good to kind of like simply really give the answer. Also disclaimer, the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right or is not exactly wrong either. It's kind of like depend on the knowledge that I have, and it's kind of like a depend on the knowledge that I have at the moment, and try to explain as simple as possible as you can. Okay, it's a kind of like a something raw or unfiltered the information that I'm trying to tell you. Okay, the whole purpose of kind of like a telling is that I just wanted to express my thoughts regarding about this concept. I know the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right, but it's something better than nothing. Okay, so also don't take this information as kind of like something serious or things like that. It's just my thought, it's just my raw information. All right, let's go through that. Let's go. All right, question is that key, what if clean fusion power was available everywhere? Okay, first of all, what is actually clean fusion power? Okay, a clean fusion power is it's a kind of like a natural way to create energy. Okay, okay, what is actually natural way to create energy? Okay, how do we create energy? We actually create energy by kind of like a burning some sort of non-renewable fuel, like oil or things and that. Okay, we have geothermal, we have kind of like a hydro plant, we have like a lot of stuff. Okay, what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, we are kind of like a somebody burning one fuel, like kind of like a burning one energy to create another energy. Okay, like the first law of thermodynamic, energy cannot be created nor be destroyed, it can transform from one to another. Okay, so we are actually kind of like a simply try to convert energy that we have, convert it into something else, like oil converted into the electricity, that electricity we could use. This is what it is, this is what we could use. Okay, now since we are growing, since humans are actually growing, we need energy, a lot of energy, and that energy cannot fulfill by burning fuels and things like that. So we need to found another resources, like a sun is a non-renewable sources, sorry, renewable sources. Okay, and other platform like a wind, tidal, these are kind of like a something things are renewable sources. They will not gone, but we have to utilize that. But the collecting those energy from that particular sources is very inefficient. Like basically is this thing, we need a very 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 big solar farm to kind of like a consume so much amount of solar and things like that. It also kind of like a depend on where you install this solar plant. Okay, it does not work on Europe, it does not work on uh, polar region, it work on in equator. Okay, another thing is a tidal. Yes, tidal is a kind of like a form is actually happen because of the gravity difference between the earth and moon. And we could kind of like a utilize that kind of like a some gravity to convert waves, and that waves we could convert into the electricity or energy. Yes, we could do that, but still how do you supposed to install those things? How do you supposed to kind of like assembly suck the energy from it? We have a technology, it's not really that key, we don't really have a technology, but the installation really required so much amount of area and things like that. Same thing happened with the wind. We are actually collecting lot of amount of energy from wind, but the have you seen the wind turbine? It's far more bigger than it is. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing, that the all the non-renewable sources that we have are very small in quantity, and that we could generate electricity in very huge. But when we try to go from renewable sources, then probably we have to install a very very heavy mechanism, very big mechanism, very big stuff to create that energy and stuff like that for it properly work. And after it creates everything, it's not really that much efficient. Yeah, solar farm takes so much amount of space, so as wind turbine, so as a tidal, so as everything, dams and everything. It takes so much amount of space, and it kind of like suddenly create a lot of disturbance in rest of the things. So these are kind of like a way that we could generate electricity. It's inefficient, but right now the way that we are. But the nature is kind of like a very different. A nature creates energy in very different way. By the way, I'm not really sure about the fusion and fission reaction happen in the sun, but I'm trying to explain as simple as possible as I can, and I don't know about the information that exactly right or wrong. But okay, so basically, our sun is hot. Can you ask why? Well, it has immense gravity. Okay, but it doesn't make sun is hot. So what makes it sun is hot? Well, I don't know that. Okay, yeah. Maybe the sun is kind of like a filled with lava and things and that. Probably. Yeah, you might right or you might wrong. I'm not really sure. I haven't really been there. Okay. So what I'm trying to tell you, what exactly is this thing that sun is hot? Why the sun is so hot, or why so much energy is actually from sun? What exactly is this thing? So there is a kind of like a sort of technique that I know. I'm not really sure that technique is right, but okay, what is exactly that technique? Well, I heard in some sort of kind of like a textbooks or things like that, there is a fusion reaction happen. Okay, there is a fusion and fission reaction. I'm not really sure what is the difference between that, but the information that I'm trying to tell you is a fusion reaction. Okay, so in the fusion reaction, there is a four hydrogen atom are fused together to create helium atom with lot of amount of energy. I don't know how this thing happened. I'm not really sure. I just heard it. I'm just trying to tell you. Okay, yeah, I don't know about that. But this is a kind of like a simply way that nature creates the energy. A nature creates the energy. Okay, so what if we could kind of like a simply harness this power to create energy? What if we could kind of like a simply utilize four hydrogen atom fused together to create helium and abundant amount of heat? What if we could make that thing? Well, probably, I don't know. I'm not really sure, or probably we have that technology, but it's not that technology. I don't know what exactly is this thing. Okay, probably we have it, but I'm not really sure. Okay, what is exactly that? Okay, nuclear technology probably. And nuclear technologies work exactly like a kind of like a something fusion. Probably, I'm not really sure also, but still is this thing nuclear is a kind of like somebody exceed so much amount of energy and chain reaction happen in them. We could utilize that nuclear to kind of like somebody create that much amount of energy, but still nuclear energy or uranium 235 is a radioactive material is a non-renewable sources. Yeah, we could probably utilize that thing for at some certain time or some certain period of time, but then after that this is not the reliable sources. And as also uranium 235 is a highly reactive. Okay, it not only creates energy but it creates the destruction too, and that's not good. Okay, yeah, like I'm not saying that we shouldn't supposed to use the nuclear technology. Definitely we should supposed to use nuclear technology for peace and things and that, but probably it's not the reliable sources. And as also uranium 235 is a very like a like basically it's not actually found in nature. Okay, we actually found uranium in very like a very like like basically it's not a kind of like a simply uranium 235 that you found, you dig the hole and you found this thing and that's it and you have a nuclear bomb. No, it's not really not that happened. Okay, when you found the material, you need to kind of like enrich that material to like enrich means like that a refine. as much as it, so that you could kind of like a create as a like a unstable nuclear atom and things like that. It's probably, I'm not really sure how the process happened, but the enrichment process takes so much amount of time and so much amount of energy and everything. So basically is this thing, we are spending so much amount of energy to create the fuel, and after we create that particular fuel, we are utilizing that fuel for kind of like simply creating energy. It's also a really very inefficient way to execute that stuff, right? So probably is this thing that we need to found a kind of like a some particular a natural way to kind of like create the energy. Okay, by the way, I'm not saying that non-renewable sources are not good. Definitely we have to use that thing, we don't really have a choice because our renewable sources are went to extinct. So probably we need to use solar farm, we need to use wind turbine, we need to use hydro plant, we need a lot of stuff, yeah, probably. But still, goals and things, I don't know, but we need to found a kind of like some very different way to extract the energy. Okay, in kind of like some very efficient with consuming less space probably. And that technique would called as a kind of like some fusion probably, I'm not really sure. Like some people are actually thinking that might be we could kind of like a study about the dark matter and dark energy, because dark matter also has a lot of energy, a lot of immense amount of energy too, that we don't know. Still we don't know about the dark matter. Nothing really at all. We just have kind of like a create the speculation regarding about that dark matter have kind of like a so much amount of energy, but probably that we don't know that. Okay, we just don't know nothing really about that. The dark matter and dark energy, these are kind of like simply the definition that actually created to people, just kind of like a simply just, I don't know. Okay, we just don't know nothing really about that. Okay, but what if we could kind of like a simply just create a kind of like a simply method to invent a such a particular method as a sun, like basically the sun that creates the energy. Like we could create that thing, like a fuse the four hydrogen atom to create helium and immense amount of energy. What if we could create that thing? What if such thing happened, then what would be the world and stuff like that? Well, I'm not really sure how this thing happened, but there is a one thing for sure is that we will have abundant amount of energy. Abundant, yeah, it's like too much amount of energy. Okay, yeah, energy would be really cheap. Okay, yeah. And basically what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, if the energy is actually available everywhere and is actually energy is actually available in very cheap, then probably is this thing that our human development would look very differently. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing that vertical farming, like this is really good. Okay, what is actually vertical farming? A vertical farming is a kind of like simply you are farming in building, that is called vertical farming. Okay, what do you mean by that? Like farming in a building? Like you don't really require a land to farm. You just need a building to kind of like simply just farm over there. You can kind of like simply build multiple kind of like simply crops in multiple floor. Like this floor has a kind of like simply barley. This floor is a kind of like tomato. This floor is a kind of like simply potato. This floor is a strawberry and things and that. Dude, that's a really cool idea. Like why not we are using it? Well, it takes so much amount of energy. Oh, what? Uh, Why? Well, like basically this thing farming, one of the really essential key for farming is the sunlight. Okay, yeah, and in a building, how do you provide sunlight? Yeah, like basically, yeah, you can kind of like simply open up the kind of like a window and things and that, but still it does not really. Yeah, like vertical farming is really good, but it consumes so much amount of energy. But what if we could have a lot of amount of energy, then probably we would not have a kind of like a farming. We would kind of like a focus on kind of like a vertical farming, because vertical farming is a kind of like a giving a lot of advantage than normal farming. Why? What kind of like advantage that they are giving? Like basically is this thing, first of all, is that the farmland that actually available far away from the customer, it cost transportation, it cost kind of like a perishable food, kind of like a spoiled and things like that. And after all those things, the ingredient that we get is not really exactly fresh. But if we have vertical farming, then probably the customer will get a very easy access of food with high quality, with enrich, and the transportation cost is also really less. One thing, another thing is that the vertical farming is actually happened, then we would kind of like a simply grow multiple foods at the same time at the same place, like might be strawberry or kind of like a tomato, potato, whatever it is. Okay, yeah, we could kind of like actually build all those crops in one building. It would be really good. Okay, yeah. As also as this thing in vertical farming, we are actually controlling all the stuff, like how much water that they get, how much kind of like a sunlight that they get. Basically sunlight is a kind of like a bigger problem, but if we kind of like a design our building in a such a way that it would get the sunlight as much as it can, and as not like, basically if we do that thing, it is really good. Okay, so if we have a kind of like assembly energy, like basically it costs so much amount of energy. First of all, it just costs so much amount of energy, but still if that energy is kind of like assembly available in cheap, then vertical farming would be really good. Like it's very efficient, very like it's very efficient in every possible way. So basically we would not have like a kind of like a some deforestation. We would not kind of like a some spend so much amount of land to kind of like cut the tree and things, and that we would not gonna happen. Another thing is that no pollution. This natural way to create the energy, this fusion reaction, create does not create any kind of like a pollution, nothing really at all. So not pollution, that means no global warming, that means everything is really good, everything is really great, right? Well, it's not exactly right either too. Yeah, like basically it's this thing, a carbon footprint in atmosphere, it should supposed to be available in our atmosphere. Like basically if there is no pollution at all, then probably we might kind of like introduce ice age. Okay, yeah, yeah, this would be true. Okay, yeah, because CO2 is not just kind of like, it's a greenhouse gases. Okay, yeah, it kind of like accumulated so much amount of energy in itself, so that entire planet is warm up. So that's why our planet is kind of like a simply literally like a habitat that we know exactly it is. So basically is this thing, the pollution that we think, excessive amount of pollution, yes, it's a bad, and no pollution at all, it's also really bad too. We need to create the balance between how much CO2 should supposed to be exist in our atmosphere. Okay, yeah, but still is this thing that if we have this kind of like assembly energy, that means we would not have pollution, and that means we could control, like we would kind of like make the balance between that, right? Another thing is that the most of the factor responsible for creating pollution is a vehicle, and we would have kind of like such a vehicle which runs on electricity, and we already have that thing. Okay, yeah, and most of the nations are actually kind of like a promises that within a century they will kind of like assembly switch their entire automobile industry into the electrics, which is really good, which is really great, but still it's not the kind of like assembly solution, because the electric car kind of like assembly consume so much amount of energy while it's creating, and it creates so much amount of pollution while it's creating. So what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, a kind of like a normal car and kind of like a electric car, they are kind of like a producing same amount of pollution. What do you mean by that same amount of pollution? Electric car doesn't really pollute, doesn't really, like it does not kind of like actually burn the fuel and things like that. Why do you say that thing? Well, as I mentioned, when the car makes in manufacturing sector, that manufacture sector creates the pollution, right? You get it? So it's not just like a basically this thing that key, like the first law of thermodynamics, dude. The energy we cannot create nor destroy, it just can't transfer, it just transfer from one to another. And while doing it that, we just kind of like only create little bit of pollution while creating the cars. And let me tell you one thing now, the normal car, let's just like basically I just watch a couple of video regarding about the electric car. Okay, yeah, a kind of like a normal car, a kind of like a combustion 2-stroke or 4-stroke combustion engine cycle IC engine car are, let's just create 100% of fuel, 100% pollution in his entire period of lifetime, since the manufacturer since the manufacturer to kind of like a somebody, the people, our customer actually kind of like a driving and consuming fuels and kind of like a burning fuels and stuff that. So basically it just creates the, like let's just create the overall chart that ki a random car, a IC engine car creates 100% of fuel. Okay, yeah, in the 100% of fuel, 100% of pollution. Okay, it creates 100% of pollution. Okay, yeah. Now the 100% of pollution, 20% of pollution is actually created at the beginning of the car. Like basically, when the car is actually formed, it creates the 20% pollution. Okay, but okay, what is actually beginning of the car? Like a beginning of the car means like that ki basically the car parts is actually kind of like a creates in different part of the world, and that parts will kind of like a work on creates on factory, and that factory creates the pollution. So we kind of like collect the data from that. So probably we are kind of like a thinking that ki 20% of the fuel is kind of like, sorry, 20% of the pollution is actually created before the car makes. Yeah, already. Okay, yeah. Then 80% of the pollution is actually kind of like a simply created by the burning fuel and things like that. Okay, do you understand this parameter, understand this chart? Now let's take another example, is the electric car. So in the electric car, the entire lifespan of electric car, okay, yeah, 80% of pollution is actually created at the beginning while making the car. Yeah, at the beginning, like a lithium extraction, mining and things like that. By the way, lithium extraction and mining takes so much amount of kind of like a simply pollution. It kind of like a simply just it just pollute a lot. Okay, and as also it not just I'm talking about the pollution, like basically water pollution actually happened. Like a mining reflection layer, lithium extraction is a really difficult to extract. It required so amount of fresh water and things like that, and it's not really worthy. But still is this thing that a kind of like some electric car kind of like simply creates, sorry, 70%, not 80 but 70% of the pollution before the car makes, and the 30% pollution actually create after. Okay, what is 30%? Like dude, electric car is not burning fuel. Yeah, but still it's great pollution. Okay, okay, have you not really understand? I mentioned that electric car not burn the fuel, that means it does not create the pollution. Well, what is exactly pollution for you? A burning fuel or what? Like pollution means like that when we burn the fuel, it kind of like a somebody create the kind of like a CO2, carbon monoxide and things like that. That is called pollution, na? Well, yeah, that is a pollution, but there is also another form of pollution actually happen. Okay, okay, what kind of like pollution happened through the electric car? Well, electric car is actually have a tires, create friction to the floor, and it create dust, it create pollution. What the fuck is that, dude? Like basically then every car should supposed to be create this pollution, na? Like basically this thing when I like basically when I drove the car at kind of like a something at a dusty area, so it creates the pollution. So like dust is a dust, na dude. It's not considered as a kind of like a pollution. Dude, what's the difference between dust and pollution? What is at least this thing? CO2, carbon monoxide, these are the tiny particle are kind of like a simply very like it's not really good. As a dust are kind of like a do the same thing too. It's not really that bad as a kind of like a simply carbon monoxide and stuff like that, but still it's a bad. The dust is also kind of like a pollution. Okay, and those are 30%. Well, probably not just the dust. It creates the noise pollution. It creates light pollution. Okay, okay. Just you are made of such stuff. Like basically, you do like you are like are you understand what is actually light pollution? What is actually noise pollution? Like noise pollution, I would understand. Okay, yeah, light pollution, like it just have a headlight that is essential for driving, right? How does it create pollution? Like how? Like okay, I don't know about that, but yeah, it creates that. And light pollution and sound pollution, these are also kind of like a pollution. What is that then? What do you want? Like should I not make car? Like I wanted to drive at somewhere, I wanted to go to the office, I wanted to go somewhere else, I need a vehicle, I want to use vehicle. So basically is this thing, I'm not using a car, what should I supposed to do? Is that for kind of like only not creating the pollution, things like that? Well, it's very hard to explain. Okay, yeah, but still, okay, yeah, you could utilize the public transport and things like that, which would create less pollution as compared to the individual person and things like that. So you are just fuck all person, dude. No, I'm not really vocal. I'm just trying to explain as simple as like basically. Okay, just talk about the question. Give me the answer regarding about question. Just don't talk about those stuff. Like basically, just tell me regarding about what if the fuel, clean fuel energy, clean fusion energy, if would exist in our world, then what would be that reality? Um, yeah, electric car, vertical farming. Then another thing is that key probably because of we have kind of like something easy to make fuel fusion fuel, so we are utilizing that fuel for industrial travel. Okay, yeah, because this kind of like a method as a fusion reaction is not, it does not rely on where you make. Like basically you can create this kind of like some energy anywhere on the universe. So basically it's this thing that we could pack up that particular information regarding how to create that particular fuel, and we kind of like install into the kind of like a spaceship or kind of like a some USS Enterprise like a Star Trek. And probably we could kind of like go the interstellar travel, and it would be really good. Yeah, it would be really great. I don't know. Whatever. I should supposed to be end here. This is it. Thank you. Thank you.